Good morning, guys. Hope you're off to a great Monday so far. Kind of gathering yourself from a holiday weekend if you were celebrating, or just sort of gathering yourself in general, because that's what needs to happen on a Monday. We're away. Let me show you where we are. That looks nice, doesn't it? I also think like that's a really good little shark. We're just still away, and we'll be back home in a few days. So you might see a few different backgrounds for Coffee Talk over the next few days. We're going to keep on trying to get content out and make sure that you're caught up on the news. So a couple things that I think you should know for today, and if you hear, we also have Dr. Seuss on in the background, so I apologize for that, but you got to do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So a couple big news items today. I know you've probably seen what's going on in Sri Lanka. I'm going to get to that in a moment. But just while we're sort of, again, kind of easing into the week, there's a story that I think needs to get a lot more attention that was just sort of flagged this weekend for me and has been developing over the last week, and that's what's going on with gas prices. Now, for some of you who don't drive, this may not be as relevant. I didn't own a car for 13 years when I was living in New York City, so sometimes when these gas prices stories came up, I was like, meh. But now that we're getting so much delivered, to our door through Amazon and through really anything, because the trucking industry is so important, gas prices affect almost every part of the economy. So what you should know is, especially if you're in California, we're seeing gas prices above $4 a gallon on average, which we haven't seen in about 5 years. And if you're in different parts of the nation, it depends on where you are. On average, gas prices are up about 10 cents across the country. Now, it might not be in your particular area, and what I would encourage you to do is check out this website called gasbuddy.com. Even in a congested area, it can tell you which gas stations have the cheapest prices for you, so it's a really good source. But it's also, they've got a lot of great analysts that I look to talking about the gas prices overall in the industry. And one of the reasons why we're seeing gas prices go up is that in the West Coast, on the West Coast, western part of the United States, we're seeing some refineries with some maintenance issues. And so that's affecting inventory and supplies. And so there's a question about how long these higher prices might last. It's not some big international story, but it's tied specifically to that. So I just want you to keep an eye on that because of the potential ripple effects throughout the entire economy. So let's talk a little bit about Sri Lanka, because that was something that we all woke up to, I'm sure, on Easter morning, just sort of unexpected. We're talking about a country we haven't talked about in a long time, but also, this horrible violence. Now numbers are putting the numbers dead near 300. You're talking about more than 500 injured. And these numbers, this story is very much developing. So I'm talking on Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, we could have new numbers and, in fact, many changes to the story. So I kept it very basic on the website for you today, also with some really just key points of, the who, what, where, when, how, information that I think you should know about. And I think that what's really key to this is two things that you should know about Sri Lanka. One, the majority of Sri Lankans are Buddhist, but there's representation from a lot of major religions. So Hindu, Muslim, Christians. Christians is the smallest minority. And over the years, there has been tension amongst these different religious groups, but also specifically among different ethnic groups within the country. So it's layers upon layers. It's not just, Muslims are against Christians and that's it. There's a lot of different layers to the different sectarian violence that you've seen in this country over the last several decades. So this is being built upon that. That's why there's a caution to what exactly happened here, who's to blame. The government is now blaming a domestic militant Muslim group, but that group, as far as we know it as of right now, hasn't claimed responsibility. The government has also alluded to foreign connections. We don't know exactly what that means. So again, I just want to be very cautious with the information as we get it. One thing you should know, and if you have a chance to read it, on our source page, I linked to it. It's a New York Times article that talks about what's happening in Asia overall and the different ways that Christians are being persecuted in Asia specifically, as different governments are moving away from secularism, which is the separation of church and state, and towards what could be described as more nationalistic or more ethnic-based rule. So check out that article, because I think that even though Sri Lanka is very specific, it's a specific country with specific issues, the New York Times did a good job of looking at themes overall in Asia over the last several years and what's happening to Christians in Asia. And I think that's something that you should know about. Finally, third thing I think you should know about today, we're just kind of, skipping around the world, but a man won, looks like he will be officially the new president of Ukraine. And he's never ever run for political office before. He's actually an actor, a comedian that played a teacher on television that accidentally became president. So if this is life imitating art, that's what we're seeing. It's a really interesting story, though. He defeated this billionaire. Come bring Cinderella to me. He defeated a billionaire, a well-known billionaire in the area that many of the public were concerned about corruption in government. And he is now speaking. He's a young man, 41, young, and he is speaking directly to also former Soviet bloc nations that had this real influence from Russia, saying, hey, if Ukraine can make a change and bring someone new into government, you can too. And so he's really talking about trying to bring a change to Ukraine, which, as we know, has been the source of basically a proxy war, right? I mean, between Russian forces that came in, annexed part of Ukraine several years ago, Crimea. There's been a continuing amount of tension between Ukrainians and Russians and where the line is drawn. So I think this is really important as we watch for what Russia does next and the influence that Russia has in Eastern Europe. Okay, so those are the three things I think you really should know about. Gas prices locally here in America, a still developing story in Sri Lanka, but overall a trend of persecution against Christians that we should pay attention to, specifically in Asia, that doesn't get a lot of attention, and a new leader in Ukraine that's really upending politics in that country, and a specific country to watch because of the Russian influence. What will Russia do next? What will Ukraine's relationship with the West be? And, as this new person bursts on the scene, what does it tell us about, politics in Eastern Europe and where that's heading? So those are three things I think you should know for your Monday morning. If you have any other stories you'd like to hear a little bit more about, info@smarternews.com, or direct message us over Instagram. All right, guys, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.